Spain, a central hub for culture. Without it, we wouldn't have things like flamenco, Don Quixote, and Enrique Iglesias. I can be your hero. But if there's one thing you probably don't think of when you think of Spain, it's video games. But what you probably don't know is that Spanish developers actually helped lay a lot of the groundwork for some of the biggest releases we've gotten in the past few console generations. I mean, Metroid Dread, wave that Spanish flag proud, baby. Castlevania Lords of Shadows, okay, we're kind of pushing the biggest release label, but I mean, I like where we're going with this. The Muppets movie adventures, well, Spain could have kept that one. Thinking of this though had me pose a question. Yes, we enjoy a lot of these games in America, as little stupid filthy Americans that we are, but what are the games that Spanish devs made and kept all to themselves exclusively in Spain? The answer? Quite a few PS4 games. Weird and endearing PS4 games. So with that being said, ¿Qué pasa es wink? Mi queso es tu queso. Vayamos como gelatina esta noche. While it's technically no longer exclusive to Spain, I feel like it'd be criminal to not kick off this list with probably one of the most infamous Spanish games ever made, Dogchild. I just had to make an exception here because the attention this game and its development team over at Animatoon Studios got definitely warrants a mention. It got a lot of initial recognition before it even released. Recognition other studios I'm sure took note of. Dogchild had you take the role of young teen Tarpak, a boy with the ability to talk to animals, including four-legged piss machine Taro. The founder and creative director of Animatoon, Dario Avalos, actually based the game off of his own relationship with his dog and said his goal was to make a non-violent game for children. Because why get shot when you can get tased? An admirable intent, sure, but really difficult in execution despite the awards the game won prior to its release. Together, the two of you go up against Tarpak's uncle Dean, a man with some pretty unexplained motives. Like his main intention, I guess, is to create this evil bug monster using dog, wolf, and mosquito genes, which sounds really cool on paper until you realize that it looks like this. Now, at no point in the game is any of this stuff really told to you. The only reason I pieced it together was because of the diary entries that are completely optional to find. And considering how grand the task you're given, I mean, you'd think Tarpak and Taro have a special weapon up their sleeves, right? And they do. It's called Ball. If only I had this in prison. Yeah, so the main gimmick of Dogchild is that you can switch between Tarpak and Taro to distract guards, pick up clues, and absolutely just pelt enemies with a good old-fashioned bouncy ball. Who doesn't love doing that? Honestly, the mechanics of the ball are kind of cool since you can Red Dead some targets, but I just wish it was fleshed out a bit more. But for what the game lacks in gameplay, it most definitely makes up for in personality. I don't know, there's just such a weird charm that Dogchild has that I feel like draws me in. Maybe I'm crazy, and maybe it's the oozing passion that you can easily tell that Animatoon had for this game. I mean, they developed a whole mobile game to tie into the PS4 release. It made me want to burn my phone, but it's still cool they made it. They even pandered to my good jolly nature and put out some virtual holiday cards to make you feel a little bit less lonely.
3, 2, 1, Happy New Year!
I tried finding out more about what Animatoon is up to now after Dogchild, and besides a really cool tropical-like game that never came out called Maracus, all I could find on Animatoon was a website that's under construction, I guess, but hey, bubbles! Okay, now, how about a Spain-exclusive game based on a Spanish parody film based on an American film icon? Tadeo Jones, or Thaddeus Tad Stones in America for licensing purposes. Okay team, great job with the Tadeo Jones name. Now, what name are we picking to bring such an iconic character to the States? Oh my god, take my money now! First debuting as a short 8-minute parody film of Indiana Jones in 2004, Tadeo Jones soon became a smash hit. Over 60 awards and nearly a decade later, director Enrique Gatto got the opportunity to bring his creation to the big screen, not just in Spanish movie theaters, but in American ones as well, in a feature-length film. And yes, a musical was made. After netting roughly $60 million on an $8 million budget, Tadeo quickly spun his way into a full trilogy, which meant movie tie-in games. Tadeo Jones y El Manuscrito Perdido, a game that actually doesn't follow any of the film's plots and even has its own original villain, given the villain has motivations not much more complex than mascots on a cereal box, but you know, I still enjoyed him in like a Saturday morning cartoon kind of way. Your mission as Tadeo, at least when you're not striking out with women,
alone at last. It could only mean one thing.
Time to play a racing video game!
Darn, I don't know why Sarah refused, but I'm sure she was afraid of losing to the
Great Tad.
is to chase down this bad guy, the new owner of the evil corporation from the films, Odysseus. God, why the do I know so much about Tadeo Jones? I'm a little concerned. Not only do you play as Tadeo through loads of 2D platforming levels, but you also get the chance to play as love interest and Tomb Raider badass Sarah and flying dog Jeff. In some ways, El Manuscrito Perdido plays a lot like Temple Run and Crash Bandicoot. In other ways, it plays like shit. And you know, despite Tadeo's charisma and charm, it didn't unfortunately stop the game from just being painfully generic. I mean, the level designs alone are just very regurgitated and kind of all the same. And while I wish I could tell you that there's a lot to love about El Manuscrito Perdido, I don't think there's nearly enough here to love for about $50. And that's not even taking into account how to get your hands on a copy of El Manuscrito Perdido. And if you're wondering how to do that, listen up, because it's a real bummer. It's a lot. You first have to make a separate Spain PlayStation account. Okay, great, easy, done it before. But then you have to go to Play Asia's website, prove you're not a terrorist. I, for some reason, failed and had to submit my photo twice. Turn, please. Buy a digital PSN card with that beautiful Spanish flag on it, then finally load that money from the card onto the Spain PSN store using your Spain PSN account. Hurdles that really, unless you're a big fan of like games like Knack, for example, that have this real unique like DreamWorks feel to them, I wouldn't recommend going through all of the hassle to get this game just because of the fact that it looks well animated, I'll put it like that. But if I had to say the biggest disappointment I felt playing El Manuscrito Perdido, it would probably be the fact that they teased an epic last boss fight in the trophies list only for us to get this. Oddly enough, the success of the Tadeo Jones films became a major milestone for Spanish animation, with the second feature film marking the first time a major Hollywood studio actually agreed to distribute 2 Spanish animated films globally. That second film was Atrapa La Bandera, or as it's called in the States, Capture the Flag. Atrapa La Bandera, ooh, wait a minute, that's kind of fun to say, hold on. Atrapa La Bandera. Alright, now that we got that out of our system, I mean, really, I just got it out of my system, but I hope you enjoyed. Now, the crazy thing about this game is that it looks like it was delisted from the Spain PSN store, since there's no trace of it that I could find, which means the only way to get this now is through eBay, and when I looked, there were only 3 copies available. 2 after I got my little grubby mitts on a copy. The movie has 12-year-old surfer Michael Goldwyn, his friends, and his grandfather travel to the moon in order to stop a billionaire Texan from destroying the American flag so that he can mine it for some rare material. A concept I could not love more. Like, if that's not the best caricature of Texas, I don't know what is. Which is great because it actually reminds me of older movie tie-in games that would just take some low-res clips directly from the movie and have that be the cutscenes for the game. I love that shit. The best way to explain the gameplay of Atrapa is kind of like a more bland version of Jimmy Neutron Attack of the Twonkies, where you combine items to brain blast solutions to puzzles. But could you send Jimmy flying into residential buildings? And that's what makes Atrapa weirdly charming, because each solution to these puzzles comes with some surprisingly fun and kind of hilarious mini games. Like, okay, the one puzzle that really stuck out to me and was really funny is you sneak into this nursing home and you have to get by this maid. And so the only way to do that is you have to combine a piece of paper and crayons, and then when you do that, you draw a $100 bill on the piece of paper turn it into an airplane, and then you actually have to control the paper airplane and have it zoom by her, and then at that point, then she finally is able to get distracted and you slip by her. There's a lot of really like unique and like weird convoluted solutions to puzzles like that, but that's what I kind of love about this game, and it starts to make it feel like it's not just for kids. In between those stages though, the game has you pilot multiple vehicles that definitely have a learning curve. Probably the most interesting thing I found in my research was that the Tadeo Jones films and Atrapa were actually made by the same director, Enrique Gatto, and also had their respective games made by the same development team, Uplay, a company that didn't really seem to make anything else outside of these games, and International Basketball Manager. While Atrapa might be a short game, it was made even longer and took away plenty of hours from my life after my save files got corrupted not once, but twice, but I'll be honest, the warning signs were all there. But the most difficult thing I found with Atrapa was that it's the only game on this list that has absolutely no English option. Unfortunately for me, this made a 4-hour game into a 6-hour experience even with a translator. The one thing you definitely can't say about Atrapa though is that it isn't hysterical. I mean, I found a lot of the slapstick humor here really landed, and considering how I didn't understand a word anyone was saying, I mean, I'd say that counts for something. It's definitely worth a playthrough if you love that GameCube era of licensed Nickelodeon games. Now, what if I told you that a Spanish developer made a pretty damn good Pokemon clone? So instead of Charizard, Pikachu, and Squirtle, Drawfighters for PS4 gave us Rufo Burrito, Manny Trejo, and Bob the Patient. Drawfighters has you take control of an up-and-coming draw master who gains the help of the mysterious promoter Ronald Kane, a Doc Lewis type of mentor mixed with a little bit of Mike Wazowski and that slimy assistant always busting his balls, and the plumber from Ratchet & Clank. The ultimate trifecta if you asked me. With the help of your custom hand-picked draw fighters, you take on other draw masters looking to make a name for themselves in the 3 different volcano tournaments, while strategically leveling up your own team. So this is kind of cheating because, alright, you can buy this game on the American PSN store, but what you can't buy here in the States is this bad boy. That's right, I spent a couple dozen clams for this special collector's edition, exclusively released in Spain by developers Wild Bit Studios. What's cool about this edition is that you get a nice big book that has a lot of neat artwork and more lore about the draw fighting world. In the back of the book is a section where you can actually create your own draw fighters and use an app to put them in the game itself. An app that, well, you can't download anymore. Then why the f did I draw this? So yeah, probably the coolest gimmick of the game you can't even use anymore, so while you were hoping to let your imagination run wild and have Mike Tyson go against Ruth Bader Ginsburg, you're unfortunately out of luck. Honestly, the team behind Drawfighters really put in a lot of work to make this a weirdly in-depth game with a unique spin on the Pokemon rock, paper, scissors elemental mechanics. And the level of customization you can do here is like really cool and interesting. I mean, you are able to put a lot of like unique thought into how you build your team up and the moves that they can have. For example, they break a lot of the Pokemon rules, so like a fire type draw fighter can learn water type moves and vice versa if you have a couple extra experience to be able to use. On top of that, WildBit took a lot of time and care to create some visually awesome character designs. And that's kind of what WildBit is good at. I mean, just a quick glance through their development history and you can see they prioritize creativity above everything else in all of their games. While there's not much of a plot to Drawfighters, I think the campaign is most definitely worth playing just to see the mental breakdown of the promoter.
I don't need to justify my decisions. You just have to remember they're here, and you are nothing more than a...
The only thing that sucks about Drawfighters is that it really creates this cool and complex system that WildBit really dumbed down in the campaign up until the last fight. A fight that, spoiler alert, is between you and the promoter himself as this luchador type boss called Brutus the Mexican, which is awesome. Overall, Drawfighters is definitely worth getting on the PSN store for a couple bucks or spending those few extra bucks to get the collector's edition like me. Just make sure you show Ron who's on top. So I love monkeys to the point where I'd do anything to make monkey. Come on, please. Monkeys are arguably the funniest animals that you can find millions of videos online for. Whether it's monkeys with guns, monkeys with candy, or monkeys with artillery weapons? And that's the premise of Baboon. Oh, wait, hold on, sorry. Baboon! Made by Relevo, who, oddly enough, are also the team behind the new Terrifier retro beat-em-up coming out soon. Shout out Art the Clown. Baboon is about an aspiring demolitions ape named Tabiki, grandson of the legendary cannons expert Moombaki. If that sounds confusing and that sounds utterly absurd, it's because it is, but in the best way possible. Using the power of explosives, your goal is to climb up each unique level one bomb at a time until you make your way to the big cheese himself, the Pirate Baboon. But don't let the art style and the, humor of this game fool you. This is easily the hardest game on this list. You clumsy f***ing monkey! And despite being hard, Baboon never feels unfair. If anything, Baboon gives you a lot of different options that can change the layout of the stages, like ice bombs that freeze lava, drill bombs that have you crash down to earth, and ghost bombs that see you phase through ecto walls. And one of the most fascinating parts about Baboon is that it actually was never intended to come to consoles at all. Relevo was actually developing it to be a mobile game, but Sony ended up finding out about it, and when the concept was pitched to them, they wanted it for consoles. And while the mobile game never happened, Relevo actually sent me the prototype for it, and after playing it, yeah, I'm definitely glad we got this on consoles instead. You clumsy f***ing mobile monkey! Given this was just a prototype, but I think the smoothness of a controller's joysticks really help with the precise control needed for some of the more difficult maneuvers you're gonna have to make. But if there's one thing I love more than anything about Baboon's gameplay, it's the boss fights. Each one is super tense, but incredibly unique, and they all have their own gimmick that you have to navigate through in order to start dealing any damage. But it's figuring out those gimmicks where the most satisfying parts of the game come in. And along with being the most satisfying parts of the game, they were also the most difficult. But that's what makes Baboon kind of awesome, because I feel like the boss fights alone are very reminiscent of old school platformers. And even though I've been talking about the game's difficulty, Baboon's not just a goofy romp through Bananaville though, no. There's weirdly a lot of emotional weight behind this title. Most of that emotion though comes from a motorcyclist you meet named Shinobu, who is looking for her forlorn love. If you want to play Baboon, obviously I'm not going to spoil it for you, but let's just say I've never been the same since. Relevo really knew what they were doing with Baboon and took a simple concept for mobile and really leaned heavily into it to expand and broaden it out for consoles. Because of that, they really made something special here. And they didn't just stop at the gameplay. This game has tons of side content. I mean, Baboon feels like a full experience. It feels like a full console game. For example, at one point I met a busload of turtles who got a flat tire on the way to something called the Turtle Bowl. When they asked for a spare and there's no other clues, I figured I'd go back to World 1 to talk to the super buff Gorilla Man because, strong buff guy can change a tire more than I can, and turns out I was right. And it's that satisfaction that really brings out the best in Baboon's side quests along with its bosses. And when I'm not doing that, I'm failing at the Turtle Bowl. But Baboon wasn't the only game Relevo developed that we're going to be talking about today. While I was looking at the very small list of Spain exclusive PS4 games, one game caught my eye in particular: Mindtaker. I mean, just look at that cover art. You want to play that game. But Mindtaker was a game I found no record of, whether it was on the store or eBay, despite a tweet from Relevo saying that there was a physical release available for pre-order back in 2016. I even found that original pre-order listing. So I got to digging. I just had to track down a copy of this game, as it's one of the only horror entries on this list and a VR game to boot. Plus I had to understand what the was up with that cat. Using the Wayback Machine and typing in a now dead link from the game's trailer, I was actually able to find some info about the game. In Mindtaker, nothing is what it seems. Uncertainty and claustrophobia are constantly increasing. A strange murder has occurred somewhere very familiar to you. Discover the supernatural origin of the terrible killing to unravel the mystery surrounding the house, the old witch and her mysterious cat, who will be your enigmatic companion on a journey of terror and wit. Oh, And now that I know it's a wicked cat, I want this game even more. But then I had a thought. Why go through all this trouble when I can get the info I'm looking for directly from the source? So I tracked down Relevo's founder, John Cortazar, and to my surprise was able to land an interview with him to get to the bottom of this mystery. While John and I spoke for roughly 40 minutes via Zoom and honestly had a great time talking to him, he made one thing heartbreakingly clear. Cancelled. Unfortunately, John confirmed that Mindtaker will never see the light of day despite being pretty far along in production. The reason behind that is the game was actually co-developed alongside a company named Virtualware that Relevo was working with, who provided a lot of help with the VR aspects of Mindtaker. Most importantly though, since Virtualware helped co-develop it, that meant the rights to the game were shared between Virtualware and Relevo, so when Virtualware pulled out of the project, Relevo had no choice but to pause development. Something John said him and the team were really disappointed about.
It was a pity because we really wanted to finish the game. I think we came out with a nice story, with nice game mechanics, but well, we haven't got the technology to do it.
But while Mindtaker was officially cancelled, John actually shared some unreleased footage of the game with me to give more of an idea of what could have been. According to John, the game would have been a terror-fueled ride through madness, with plot twists around every corner, never knowing who or what to trust, including... Yeah, so the cat. Let's talk about the cat. So as marketed, the cat is actually a big focal point of the gameplay here, since its mysterious power actually helps protect you from the evil that lurks inside the home you're investigating. The start of the game would have had you enter the home as a detective looking to solve a murder, when all the doors and windows slam shut and the lights go out. Suddenly, everyone helping you investigate the killing is dead, leaving nothing but you and a new feline friend. Or foe.
The idea was to follow the cat or not follow the cat. You also constantly are hearing a voice in your head. That's the Mindtaker, but you never know if it's the cat or it's some other thing.
While you primarily are pretty helpless in Mindtaker, the gameplay seemed like it would have been really cool and interesting, because the further you got separated from the cat, the more interesting the game got, because you'd start feeling side effects like headaches. Honestly, the way John described it, and from the test footage I saw, it seemed like it would have been a really interesting take in like a mix between Outlast and Eternal Darkness. I'm sold. You mention either of those games' names and I'm sold. And a lot of the games seem to center around putting you in these puzzle-like scenarios where you would have had to make your way back to the cat to avoid the main villain of the game, the witch. The character that John said had many different iterations you'd encounter throughout the game.
She had different faces or different moods. Like she can be like an old woman or like an evil monster with no face and just teeth in the face, and she can change.
And I mean, just to put in perspective everything, you know, this was supposed to be a VR game. Something that John said added a lot of extra challenges to development, including animating the cat itself to function in the way that Relevo wanted it to. And not only was it a VR game, it was a VR game that was supposed to come out in 2017. You know, that was the same year Resident Evil 7 released. So it's not like the VR concept for PS4 had really a lot of time to spread its wings yet. So the fact that Relevo and Virtualware were confident that they could put out something to that caliber, I think was really cool, and it's really sucks. It's really disappointing. So you might not love every game on this list, which, believe me, is more than understandable. But when you leave whatever little room you're watching this from, I ask you to reflect on something. Games are hard to make, and I think nowadays we're so spoiled with AAA developers and AAA titles, there's a lot of challenges that present themselves throughout the game making process that many aren't aware of, especially for indie devs. And if there's one major takeaway in my research on these games, it's that the community of Spanish devs really help support each other through the positive and the negative. I mean, who am I to critique and crap on Dogchild when Wild Bit Studios is there to lift the people at Animatoon up? Playing all these games became a lot more than just playing them for me. I could really start to see the heart put into them and saw how the Spanish influences brought the best out of these games. And regardless of the final outcome, you can't say these devs weren't passionate about what they made, despite how some of them may have turned out. But whether it's Tadeo's cringy yet endearing cutscenes,
It was time to give the fake scroll to Alexander. I hope he won't notice it.
or the cathartic feeling of knocking guards out with a Super Ball, I think there's definitely at least one thing each of these games has that can really suck you into them. So go out, show all these developers some love, kiss your wife, kiss your husband, kiss whoever you have, and whether you support these devs through buying their games or just simply supporting them in their next endeavors, I just ask that you do what you can to show that they're appreciated. And hey, if there's imports from any other country you want me to talk about, let me know in the comments below. I'd love to see whatever the hell Germany's up to. But for now, it's about that time for me. So in the meantime, mi madre es tu madre y hace queso bastante bien.